Michael Van Runkel here for HotCars.com. I'm here in sunny Arizona where I have one very important question. Can you daily drive a Dodge Demon? Now obviously it's legal to daily drive a Dodge Demon because this is the fastest production drag racer ever intended to be sold to the general public. It's got 870 horsepower when you put in the Demon Crate package. It's got a trans brake and line lock. It's everything you want in a drag car, but it's legal on the street. Dodge only made 3,500 of these in 2018, and they're the top of the line for the Challenger. But there are so many different models of the Challenger, I want to know, is it possible to drive the highest spec, highest output Demon and live with it comfortably? So hop along with me as I get behind the wheel and drive the fastest production internal combustion car in the world from 0 to 60 in traffic. In the meantime, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Thanks. When you climb into the Demon, in this case, the first thing I gotta do is remove the harnesses, because this one has racing harnesses. It's on loan to me from Radford Racing School, which is why I'm here in Arizona. Luckily, they kept the 3-point belts here for a little bit of extra comfort. Then it's got just like a normal Fiat Chrysler key. Push button start, foot on the brake, fire it up. It's pretty much like a normal vehicle. I got climate control here. I got a steering wheel. I got paddle shifters because it's got the 8-speed automatic. But that dinging is showing it's using the red key. I got tire pressure issues because they've got the tires a little low for drag racing. Now let's go see if driving this Demon in town is as smooth as sort of the user experience, let's say, of the center console is once you get used to having that AC on. Now this is not the world's smoothest road, and you can definitely hear a little bit of road noise. I don't know if that's the NTO5Rs, or have they removed a bunch of sound deadening to help lighten this thing? It is pretty hefty at, like, you know, well over 4,000 pounds for a drag car, and weight definitely slows you down when you're trying to go as fast as humanly possible. Luckily, it's got 870 horsepower. In general, I'd say it drives pretty smoothly. This is not the smoothest road in the world, again. It's that sort of Arizona-style asphalt, not great for anybody. In my Porsche Cayenne Turbo, with off-roading tires, I would be getting very little road noise because it's got the airlift suspension. This Challenger in Demon spec does have softer suspension than a normal like Hellcat wide body, like the one that Radford teaches people to drive on the road circuit with, because the point is you want it to squat when you're launching off the line so that more of the weight heads to the rear and you get better rear wheel traction. The thing is, I suspect, and in the name of scientific integrity, I'll say, I think you probably could drive a Dodge Demon. And I came into this thinking that that might be the case because of the softer suspension. The tires, brakes, and powerful engine led me to be a little bit concerned. So far, you know, we just went over a pretty good bump and it was just fine. You know, compared to most sports cars, this thing is smooth. Compared to luxury tourers, it's maybe a little bit rougher than you would want. And these are not the drag radial tires. That's an important consideration. We've got normal wheels that come with the Demon on this thing. And for the record, Radford has cornered the entire market on those Demon-specific Nitto NTO5Rs. So if you want to buy them, you gotta call them. Otherwise, you have to get the ones without the Demon logo. And if you're gonna spend like well over 6 figures on your Challenger Demon, you gotta have the Demon specific logo on the tires. Apparently they're not that expensive though, like 200 bucks a pop for the rears. That's like less than a normal Michelin Pilot Sport 4S. Now what really surprised me when I went to Radford Racing School for the Grand Prix racing course was how well the Challenger in Hellcat wide body spec performed. And they said it was durable as the day is long. They never really have any problems with them other than the occasional bent control arm from people hitting the curbs, and of course replacing tires and oil changes and the usual consumables. I wonder, is the Demon, given that it's the maxed out version of the 6.2 liter Hellcat Hemi that everyone likes to put in everything these days, especially Dodge, is it going to be as reliable, or have they really maxed it out? And that's why there aren't going to be any more powerful Challengers than the Demon. Or is it just because the Demon was an exercise in absolute insanity by Dodge, and with the era of electrification ahead of us, there's no point in making a more powerful gasoline-powered engine. So we're behind some slow traffic here. Let's speed up. Again, that supercharger whine, I just love it. I fell in love with that driving a Hellcat swapped Jeep Gladiator 6x6 conversion. It was, I believe, my first supercharged car. You can check out that review on the Hot Cars YouTube channel. And then I also drove a Lotus Evora GT on the track at Radford Racing School. It's got that 3.5 liter Toyota V6 that's supercharged, and I just love the supercharger whine. It's got the linear power band here, but speaking of power, just driving on the street, the throttle modulation is just like a normal car. We're not in a race car where like a little bit of throttle goes full gas. I've got, you know, a quarter throttle now. We're just cruising along. The gear ratios are clearly super low because I'm at 1400 RPM, but that's a product of also having more power and more torque than would ever be necessary in this situation, as long as I was driving street legally, because the Demon is street legal. That's the whole point. Now, of course, if you were driving to the grocery store and you wanted to bring your kids, you might not want to put the whole bar in the back with the harnesses. You might want to retain the normal 4 seats, but this is a hardcore drag car that they use to teach their drag racing class, and when you're doing that, you gotta have the harnesses. Now we're pulling up to a dude in a nice car, and I'm filming with a Dodge Demon. I don't think he wants to race though. That would be really dangerous given that there's traffic around. It's still very impressive to me that you don't get the sense of losing traction in the rear end because the throttle modulation is just like driving a normal car. And yet if you wanted to drag race this thing, you would have no problem burning just about anything off the line. And if I want to speed up here in traffic and try and get to a left turn so I can go find a freeway, well, you better bet I got plenty of power. But then, in traffic, you know, how are the brakes? Pretty bitey. After all, if you've got a car that can run a quarter mile in the 9s, you better hope that you can stop it just as quickly. And they've got good bite. They might even be a little bit too strong for normal driving. Not necessarily a bad thing, you might just have to get used to it. It does sort of pull and shimmy when you start braking, but that might just be the effect of this car getting mostly driven through hot quarter miles instead of just being driven on a daily basis. The steering is nice and light coming into corners like this. No problem, anyone could handle this. It's pretty precise. It's a little bit vague, but we're in a muscle car. This is not a Lotus after all. And in reality, for a daily driver, you want a nice light steering wheel. You don't necessarily want that hardcore engagement all the time. So now I'm gonna get on the freeway and see what this thing drives like in normal life at 65 miles an hour instead of passing 65 miles an hour very rapidly on the way to like 130. Again, talking about the steering though brings up an interesting conversation because some people, when they get the Demon crate package, they want to put on those super narrow front tires to shave weight so that they can pop wheelies off the line and leave everyone behind as they walk away to sub 9-second quarter miles. That would be for a tuna Demon, which seems excessive. But the point being, if you do that, then you can't daily drive it, obviously. It's just gonna be a little too iffy. What happens if you get in a rainstorm? That's not feasible. Plus, there is something to be said for having less control on the drag strip if you have those narrow front tires. If something does go wrong and you get a little sideways, you kind of want bigger tires, wider tires to have more grip so that you can correct any mistake you might have made. If you're a professional and you're using this car only for drag racing, go ahead and get the skinny ones. But we're experimenting with the Demon as a daily driver. So let's talk about what you would need to do with a daily driver. I'd say the steering is just fine with these, you know, average sized front tires, but it's just a surprisingly tame car to drive. Other than the road noise, I'd say this is totally doable. And it would probably do pretty good cruising across the state at, 80. The only thing I'd be worried about is just getting absolutely terrible fuel economy. And that's a pretty serious detraction for the Demon if you're talking about daily driving. Then again, no Challenger is really going to get any kind of anything near to good fuel economy because they all weigh like 4,500 pounds. They're aerodynamic as a brick, better than a Jeep Gladiator Rubicon though. And they've mostly got those big V8s, which is what we love about them. And to a certain extent, it's like the Porsche tax. You buy a Porsche, anything goes wrong, you know it's going to be expensive. So you try to fix the little things and do the oil changes yourself and save a little bit of money. With a Challenger or a Demon or a Red Eye, you just got to get over the fact that you're going to be spending money on gas. So far, the Viz is pretty good. It's a little bit dark in that corner, but the mirror is pretty good size for a normal car. It's not sports car small, and it's not one of those digital rearview mirrors that a lot of sports car manufacturers are trying to make these days. I do not like those. So, here we are on the freeway, cruising at 60. Oh, that smooth shift, that was a downshift to get us more in the power band as I try to accelerate to freeway speeds, brings up this ZF 8-speed transmission that Dodge and Jeep and everybody is using right now. It's not a dual clutch, it's a normal torque converter 8-speed transmission. I've driven it extensively in a Jeep Gladiator Rubicon. Now obviously this is a beefed up version, but it's the best automatic transmission I've ever driven. And that shift was almost imperceptible. And you're just like, whoop, we're in the power band, time to go. But now, we're cruising at 80. We're at 2,000 RPM, so we've got plenty of power thanks to the Hellcat engine. But there is a fair amount of road noise. Now at freeway speeds, even with the engine at 2,000 RPM, you get a little bit of exhaust hum, which I don't mind. I'm not hearing any supercharger noise, but I am hearing a fair amount of road noise and wind noise. I would suspect that that's some of the lightning effort, but it could also just be that this is a Challenger that, again, just gets thrashed all the time. Let's talk about comfort for highway cruising. The seats, while bolstered, have plenty of space. I'm not getting hunched forward by the shoulders. I'm not getting pinched here. In fact, I'd call them pretty roomy. I've got the seat almost all the way down, and at 6'1", you can see I've got plenty of headroom. I don't have the seat anywhere near all the way back, even though I've got moderately long legs for someone who's 6'1". So I'd say anyone could fit in this unless you're Shaquille O'Neal. And that's an important consideration. You got good padding here. You got excellent reachability. You're not going over here to move your mirrors around. The design is actually pretty good. I wish this was leather, not plastic, but hey, I have texture phobias. That's just me. It's a very familiar touchscreen here in the dash for me because it's the same as a Jeep Gladiator Rubicon without the off-roading goodies, but it is where you access the line lock and the trans brake for when it's time to start drag racing. So all in all, I'd say that that's a pretty easy to use system. The gauges are a little small. They have to cram 200 mile an hour in 10 mile an hour increments onto a small analog gauge. And I'd be curious if there's a way to put that in the center here instead of having my tire inflation, which I think is coming up just because Radford keeps the tires underinflated on purpose for drag racing. The tachometer goes up to 6,000 RPM, which is, again, plenty for daily driving. Personally, I like an engine that winds up a little higher, but this is, after all, an 870 horsepower supercharged 6.2 liter V8. Turning in here again and accelerating. Yeah, you can pop it, no problem when you want to. And I actually lost traction at the rear end for a second there, just because it spins the rear wheels with ease, even though I was already kind of moving a little bit, and I wasn't even at full throttle. 30 minutes of driving in this thing, I'm 100% sold. I think you could definitely daily drive a Dodge Demon. After all, what I've been concerned about most seems to be road noise and wind noise, And because I'm filming, I haven't tried the sound system. I would bet you my bottom dollar that Dodge put a pretty good sound system in this thing. After all, the kind of people who are buying a car like this probably want to listen to some good tunes. And that would cover up the road noise and the wind noise and make the Dodge Demon the #1 perfect daily driver of all time. Now I'm kidding, of course, because Porsche 911 is the perfect daily driver of all time. But I'm impressed by the Dodge Demon. I'm impressed by the design. The power speaks for itself. But the suspension, the brakes, the steering, the pedals, the shifter, the climate control, it's all totally doable. I hope you learned something watching this video today, which was admittedly a ton of fun to shoot. Big thanks to Radford for loaning me a Demon for the afternoon. And before you sign off, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It helps us move up in the algorithm. Thanks.